This one, he is a league winner if you were able to survive last week. Like I wasn't able to. Adam Rank eliminated me in the Fantasy Live League because I started Justin Herbert. But if you have him and you made the playoffs, I think better days are coming. Starting this week against the Atlanta Falcons, you could see there, he's thrown at least 2 passing touchdowns in 7 of his 9 games this year. That gives him a safe floor. He already has tied the rookie record for most 300-yard passing games with 6. I think he breaks that record this week against the Falcons, who allow a ton of yards. They're allowing a lot of touchdowns to quarterbacks as well. And in fact, they have allowed the most fantasy points per game to the position. And then he gets the Raiders next week. They're in the top 10 of points allowed to quarterbacks. And then he finishes out with Denver, who he's already scored over 21 fantasy points against this year. I think that last week was more of the anomaly, and he's going to make up for it in these next 3 games.
Yeah, it's funny because Flory and I talk a lot during the week, of course, with another guy, Matthew Frederick. And we were talking about this, I think it was last week, because we were starting to look at playoff schedules. And for whatever reason, some people had Herbert with a tough playoff schedule. And I'm like, what am I missing? Like, I love this matchup against the Falcons. And then even though Denver, I would believe, would be the toughest game, but that's at home. So he's basically playing 3 dome games. That's exactly what you want from your quarterbacks this time of the year. And like Michael, thankfully in my league of record, I was able to survive last week and move on. And I know that a lot of people might want to panic. You might want to go pick up and chase the fantasy points with Kirk Cousins. Like, I wouldn't do that. I would stick with Justin Herbert. He's going to be just fine. And you're going to advance to week 15.
My guy, Herbie, always coming through. We need you this week. Don't do a dud like you had last week against the Patriots. But that was in the past. We only look forward
in this
show. Exactly. All right, Florio, who's your second guy? I'm looking at who it is on my rundown. I feel like Adam Rank's going to like this one.
I think Adam Rank is going to like this one. It is David Montgomery, Bears running back. And I know we could say, oh, he hasn't been great for stretches this season, but he has been really good the last 2 weeks. And in fact, since Tariq Cohen has gone down, he is the top 10 running back. And you see right there, the second best fantasy playoff schedule for running backs, starting this week against the Houston Texans, who allow the most rushing yards per game and the second most fantasy points per game to running backs. I think that he gets over 25 fantasy points for a 3rd straight game because he's done it already against the Lions and the Packers, showing that he can take advantage of good matchups. And then after that, he gets the Vikings, who are allowing over 100 rushing yards per game to running backs. That's in the top 11 in the league. And then after that, he gets the Jaguars, who have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. I think that David Montgomery is going to be a very surprising player that is going to be on a lot of championship rosters.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest factors was the switch in play calling. Because once Bill Lazor took over as the play caller for the Chicago Bears, David Montgomery started to get some more action, especially fantasy-wise. And Cole Kmet, the mighty Met, KMET, he was also a big beneficiary of this as well. So I like David Montgomery. I think that whatever happens with the Bears, and I know that there's Bears fans speculating that there could be a new regime change or anything like that, what I think that we've seen this season is that David Montgomery, when given the opportunity, and if they can, just make some improvements on the offensive line, he's already shown he's currently the RB11. He's a top 10 fantasy running back if Chicago gets their house in order. So keep an eye on him for next year as well.
All right, your guy, David Montgomery, come through. Such a good start this week against the Houston Texans. Florio, it's your 3rd guy. Earlier in the show, we were hyping up Travis Kelce being the safest and the best tight end in fantasy football. But you have another tight end who could help lead us to a fantasy championship.
Yeah, I think Big Bob Toney can get the job done for fantasy owners. And if you don't have a Kelce or a Waller or a Hawkinson, you've probably been struggling at tight end this year. But Big Bob Toney has come through in recent weeks. In the last 3 weeks, he's averaging nearly 16 fantasy points per game. That is a top 5 tight end in that span. He has scored at least 13 and has a touchdown in all 3 of those games. In fact, he is tied with Travis Kelce for the most touchdowns amongst tight ends. And then you look at his playoff schedule. It is the best for tight ends right now. They get the Lions this week, who in week 2, when he was still just starting to break out, scored over 10 fantasy points and caught a touchdown against them. Then he gets the Panthers, who've allowed the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends. And he finishes out with the Titans, who have allowed 7 touchdowns to the tight end position. That puts him in the top 7 this year. And if you don't have one of those top tight ends, you're probably just hoping for a touchdown each week. So why not go with a guy who has a favorable schedule and it already leads the position at least in touchdowns?
Yeah, I really regret not holding on to him in my league of record, thinking that my combination of Dallas Goedert and Jonnu Smith was going to be something. The thing is it's always tough because Aaron Rodgers hasn't really featured a tight end throughout his career. I know they always talk about, we can't find a tight end. It's like, you get tight ends. Aaron just doesn't typically throw it to him. But he's shown a pretty good rapport with Big Bob this year. So I love this. Yeah, this is a regrettable mistake for me. So if you got him, I think that you're very comfortable moving through the fantasy playoffs.
Florio, thank you for those three guys who you think are going to be NFL Fantasy League winners this season.